Hello and welcome to another episode of ICU Doc Talk. Thanks for joining me today. Today I'm going to talk about how I'm not going to be. Just a few days ago, I put up my final video on social media. I'm not going to be making social media content anymore, and I think I'll talk about that briefly, if you care. And then, but I'm still going to do this podcast at my usual sporadic pace. And then I think I'll share an ECMO patient case, and then answer some emails, and then get to some books. All right, that's the agenda. All right, so yeah, last night I put up a video on TikTok and Instagram saying that I will not be making social media content anymore, and that is true. I'm just, and I'll just, why don't I briefly talk about my journey through social media and, kind of arriving at this point. Like, why am I not doing it anymore? I guess, it's multifactorial. It's several reasons. This was kind of a long time coming. I kind of felt it, that I just didn't want to do it anymore. And there's a couple of reasons, and I'll talk about it. So, but I'll just back it up. So I started the whole reason I'm doing this podcast, right? This all came from social media, right? And I started a TikTok account in 2021, I think. At the encouragement of my sister, who had started an account. She was like, and this was during the pandemic, right? And she was like, starting an account, and she was like, she's like, just, with medical content and to help with disinformation, and it'll be huge. She's like, people are starving for that information. She's like, I guarantee it'll blow up. And I'm like, all right, well, whatever. And honestly, the reason I got on TikTok to begin with, I created an account, but I didn't make any content. The whole reason I even downloaded the app was to keep me awake while I held my baby daughter in my arms so I didn't fall asleep with her. That's how it all started. No joke. 2 a.m. My daughter was a terrible sleeper, and so I was up at night all the time, holding her to try to get her back to sleep, or helping with my wife, breastfeed, all that stuff. And I didn't want to fall asleep while holding her, right? Because that's very dangerous. You should not do that. That's like a high risk for SIDS. So I would look at TikTok videos because it's highly stimulating and engaging, as you know, and it wakes you up. That was the whole reason I even started TikTok. And it worked. It kept me awake. I didn't fall asleep. And then I started to make content. The first video I made was kind of political, not really political. I think it was about the deficit spending or something. I don't even remember. And didn't really go anywhere. And I put up a couple more videos, made a couple medical videos. No one seemed to care. All I got was trolls. I was just arguing with trolls. And I was like, this is stupid. Barely had any followers. And I was like, whatever, this isn't really worth my time. And then I was about to delete it because I was like, I'm done. And then I made one video, a very short one, about people dying from COVID. I forget about how it was very brief. It was some sort of good hook on it or something, and that went viral. And then the follower count just started going up, and so I was like, okay, I'm doing this, right? So and then I made an Instagram account with just the same material, and I've been doing that for 3 years. And it's been a great journey. And honestly, seeing all the just amazing positive comments on my video I put up yesterday, my final video, just thanking everybody. It was just amazing. Just the positivity. And I am proud of the account. And I think it's had an overall positive impact. And I'm proud of it. I am. But someone left a great comment saying it's like building a house. You build it, and you're done. And that's how I feel about it. Like, I built it. I don't have anything else more to say. I don't. You don't need to hear from me anymore. And I honestly want to delete the accounts, but I won't. I'll leave the content as is because I'm actually afraid somebody will, they'll snatch up the handle and they'll impersonate me. That leads me to kind of some of the reasons that for me, the social media accounts have become more of a net negative in my life. I think the accounts are a net positive in the public. But for me in my life, they're becoming a net negative. And one of the reasons is I feel like I've gotten away with, making some political posts and stuff like that, and lots of trolls. I've gotten away with having no negative fallout in terms of like doxing or people outing me or who I am or where I live. None of that has happened. and I'm glad. And I feel like, let's get out. Like, I'm just going to get out of this now, before something like that happens. That is a major reason why why I'm stopping. It's just not worth it anymore. It's a liability in my life having an account that's fairly well known in medical communities, and lots of people that hating a lot of the content I make, particularly the political, and that's a liability to my life, and it's unacceptable, right? It become a point where it's like it's not worth it to me to have that liability. That's one reason getting rid to stop doing the content. That's one of the reasons I want to delete the accounts, but again, I won't. Another reason is just I'm sick of opinions. I know you are too. I'm sick of dealing with people's opinions. You've heard it all at this point. It's like, oh, it's a healthy attitude to be like, hey, let's listen to people. It's like, well, I've heard everybody. Like, I've seen so many, right? I've been dealing with so many comments over the years, right? I'm just sick of it. I'm just sick of responding and considering people's comments. I'm also kind of sick of myself, sick of seeing my face. Ego is a part of this, right? Right. Having a social media account with a lot of followers, it definitely strokes your ego, and I'm no exception to that. Vanity is a part of it, and I'm just sick of it. I'm kind of sick of myself, and I'm sick of having a large social media following. I just kind of want to get away from it. It's a caricature of yourself, right? It's not quite real, but it is real. It's just a sliver of yourself that people are seeing. It's just weird. It's just strange, right? It's not natural. The human mind, the human brain is not evolved to be part of such a complex, large social network. It's just not, right? Our ancestors grew up in, knowing 50 to 100 people, being able to handle that and having relationships. Having fractured, dissociated relationships in time and space with strangers on a large scale, it's not natural. It's weird. And it's not good for mental health, right? Now, my mental health has been fine throughout all of this. It's honestly not. It's not like, oh, I'm at a breaking point mentally. That's not where I'm at. Although it would be fine if I were. It's fine if someone is like that. Like I could keep going, but and then the other emotion I'm feeling is just exhaustion over it. I'm just tired and I'm exhausted. And creating social media content, while it's been easy for me because I just do it on the fly with very little thought, and I do it in my car or whatever. It hasn't been that big of a burden, but it does kind of run in the background of your mind. And then when you drop a video that's like goes viral and there's controversial takes and you're looking at them and you're thinking about it, that's a lot of mental energy I'm expending throughout the day that I just don't need to expend. I just don't need to do that. I don't want to do it anymore. That's kind of the short of it. Like, you've heard enough from me. You've heard enough. That's it. But I'll keep this podcast going because I do have things to say, and I like having the outlet, and I like talking about books, and I like educating. So I'll keep this going. But I seriously, I'm done. I'm not making any more content on social media. I'm not doing. Another thing is I was getting other accounts impersonating me on Facebook with like tens of thousands of followers, and on TikTok. There's other impersonating accounts, and TikTok wouldn't verify my account. Facebook doesn't care. And I'm just kind of like, well, I don't want to be impersonated. That's another threat. That was just another thing. Like, I'm sick of that. I wish those accounts would go away. But they won't. I just hate social media. I don't hate it, but I hate the companies, right? There's nothing to love about these companies. There's also just this perverse relationship with social media companies and content creators, right? It's totally perverse. We're basically serfs, right? We create content for free for social media giants. They then use that content to capture people's attention with addicting algorithms that they know perfectly with surgical precision how to target someone's attention. Surgical precision. It's with algorithms, right? That humans barely control now. And then I create content for that. And then they addict people to their platforms. And then they sell that attention to companies to profit off of, right? It's a very, very, so basically a serf in a techno-feudalistic culture, right? And I don't like that. And the only reason, I don't like being a part of that system. It's always bothered me. It bothers me now. But, what are you going to do? So I'm going to stop doing that. I never made any money off of the content except TikTok paid I did go into their. I got out of their fund, but I made $1,000 over 3 years from TikTok. $1,000. I never did any endorsements with anybody else. Nobody once with moneyed interest and influenced any of my opinions on social media. Not once. Never happened then. It's never happened with the podcast. I know it's hard to believe, and probably some people won't believe it, but it is true. Anyway, that's it. That's my journey. So thanks for joining me on that journey, and the content will be there to share and download. But I'm exiting from that, so I appreciate it. So that's the story there. Oh yeah, there was one more thing, a couple more things I wanted to mention about social media. And so there wasn't an inciting event that got me to stop doing it, right? There was no threat. There was no hospital administrators that were like angry. None of that. It was just me and my wife talking, being like, let's be done with this. There was no, just so you know, there was no like, because I've gotten lots of great people reaching out, a lot of other big social media medical content creators being like, hey, did anything happen? The answer is no, nothing happened, right? Nothing happened. Nothing like that, fortunately, right? I've never had any threats to my life or anything like that, fortunately, right? That's one of the reasons, like I said before, why I want to stop. Like, let's just get out now before anything like that happens. As far as a hospital administration, where I work, but I've never heard, not once, from anybody at work being like, hey, you shouldn't say that. Never happened. Never. And I work at a very large major academic institution. I've only gotten positive feedback, honestly, in-person feedback. Of course, there's negative feedback, but people probably just don't tell me that, which is fine. In fact, when the account started to blow up, I actually messaged the social media director or whatever at my institute, and I was like, and I showed them my account. I'm like, is this okay? I don't want to get fired over any of this. And they're like, no, it's fine. It's fine. It's not a big deal. So just, if everybody's wondering, nothing like that happened at all. I really haven't seen really any negative impact in my life from having the account. Some people I've had people ask like, hey, what's it like to have a big social media account? I will tell you, it's nothing. Okay. It's nothing. It's not a big, it's nothing changed. Nothing will change about your life. If you have a large following, I can tell you that from experience. Nothing is suddenly great, right? It's nothing. The experience of having a large social media following doesn't mean a lot to me in my life. Now maybe I'm sounding ungrateful or whatever, but that's just been my honest experience. It was exciting as it was happening, oh wow, all these followers and stuff. But after a bit, it becomes normalized. It's not really anything anymore. Your life's the same. Just take my advice for it. Your life isn't going to change. It just gets a little more strange. Okay. And I know I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know about social media if you're on it. It's a shallow well to draw from, right? You know what I mean. You go to social media, you seek connection, you seek information, you seek entertainment for all these different reasons. And then that gets satisfied, but then it's short-lived, right? It's a shallow well. It's not a satisfying thing. It's not wholesome. It's cheap. Social media is just, it's a cheap life. And you know that. You feel that when you're on there. I was experiencing that too. Making content is a shallow well, right? Because what brings content creators to create content? Yeah, they have endorsements or whatever, they make money, but they also, they get a dopamine hit, right? When you see your videos become viral, and then you watch the reaction. That's what brings the content creator, with large following. That's what brings them to it, right? I'm not going to say that wasn't my motivation either. And it's a shallow well. It's not satisfying. It's not wholesome. It's not authentic. And you know that. Everybody knows it. Again, I'm not saying social media is all bad. It's not. And I'm not I'm not swearing it off in my life. I'll use various platforms in my personal life for whatever reasons. Anyway, there you have it. All right, let's move on. I want to talk about an ECMO case that occurred that has some interesting teaching points. Now, as you may or may know, I'm an ECMO practitioner. I put people on ECMO, heart-lung bypass machine, and it's a complicated, difficult field to be in because it's full of, there's some data, there's some not data. It's very institutionally dependent who you put on ECMO, why, what circumstances. It's very complicated, and it's highly subjective. So I think it's very useful to talk about ECMO because that's how you learn in such a niche field. So there was a case in the operating room, a patient who was waking up from anesthesia and suddenly went into cardiac arrest. Now, this wasn't my patient. I was currently doing anesthesia. I do both anesthesia and intensive care. I happened to be doing anesthesia this week, and it was a colleague's operating room. It wasn't mine, but it was a code blue went off, so I would go to the room. I work in a very collegial, collaborative environment with plenty of amazing colleagues, and we all back each other up, right? I work in really a model facility or like care team. So anyway, so I come into the room, they're doing chest compressions, and we're all running the code, everybody's helping out, trying to figure out why the patient went into arrest. Now, the arrest on emergence, and which is a dangerous time of coming through anesthesia. And this, as far as I understood, the patient's case was pretty uneventful. It was a pretty routine, minor procedure, and happened to arrest. And maybe it was hypoxemia. There's confusion when this happens. Now, when you have a cardiac arrest in the operating room, and it's not an emergent case, it's elective. Patients that come in electively for surgery, they're pretty healthy at baseline. Now, they can be sick, right? But they're not, these are not patients already in the ICU. These are not patients coming to the emergency department that I'm talking about. I'm talking about elective cases, right? On average, if you're walking around, you come for surgery, you have some good functional reserve in your body. And the reason I'm bringing this up is if someone's arresting, cardiac arrest in this case, they usually may be a good candidate for ECMO. ECMO, if you don't know, as I said, is when we put these huge tubes, these catheters, and usually someone's groin, to pump blood for their body because their heart won't pump. Okay. So in the operating room, if a code is going for 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, I'm immediately being like, well, maybe we should get the ECMO team involved so we can cannulate this patient onto ECMO. So I have a low threshold to do that. So I called the ECMO practitioner who I knew was on, and that is often my role. I will be in that role often. But I wasn't that day. I was in a different role. So I called my colleague and friend, and I said, hey, come down to this operating room. Bring our ECMO backpack, right? We have a backpack full with initial ECMO cannulating supplies, sterile supplies, drapes, gloves, and then access kits to quickly get access to femoral vessels while the rest of the ECMO team is being recruited. And then that involves bringing the actual ECMO circuit that is primed with saline, all of the ECMO supplies, the cannula, the dilators, tubing, scissors, clamps, all that stuff. So that's all being activated. I said, hey, why don't you come down, bring your backpack, and let's have a low threshold to actually activate, put this patient on ECMO. So he came, and the code was still going, and we didn't really know why. The patient was still coding. It wasn't a very clear reason, despite our best efforts. Lots of people in this room, lots of people helping, right? And so I managed to slip in a TEE probe, transesophageal echocardiogram, a probe into the esophagus. Just take a look at the heart. And what's the heart doing? It's stunned, right? It's barely moving. But that's hard. It's hard to know. Well, okay, is that the reason? Does this patient have a PE? Did that cause the code? Or is the heart stunned because it's just in low perfusion state from arrest? So it showed me that the heart wasn't moving very well. I mean, it was really poor function. It was moving. It wasn't totally akinetic. But it's unclear if that's the etiology. And that's really important because, okay, should we put this patient on ECMO? Is this an MI? Is this a PE? Should we go to the cardiac cath lab afterwards to get a stent or, whatever. So you try to figure that stuff out, but you can't always. And sometimes you just have to make a decision. So this was a relatively young person who had some comorbidities, nothing crazy, still ongoing cardiac arrest. So, we decided to put the patient on ECMO. So with chest compressions going, my colleagues, I didn't scrub in, but I was there helping my colleagues scrubbed in, prepped the groin, got access with a TEE probe, and got access to the femoral vessels, femoral vein, and femoral artery. Floated big Amplatz stiff wires up to confirm, your wires at the bicaval junction. That shows you that you can dilate that you're on the venous side, and then the descending aorta shows you that you're on the arterial side, if you know what I'm talking about. Okay, but here's what happened next. Here's why I'm sharing this story. So before my colleagues actually dilated and cannulated, meaning they had little catheters in and wires in the femoral veins ready to dilate, cannulate, and put the patient on ECMO. My colleague, experienced ECMO practitioner, was like, okay, well, hang on, how's the patient doing? Because we got ROSC, meaning during this, we got return of spontaneous circulation. So the blood pressure came back, the pulse came back, and the patient was kind of not doing okay, but was no longer in cardiac arrest. And we had not officially put the patient on ECMO yet, right? So we're in this standstill. So we ask, how's the patient doing? Well, are they on a lot of inotropic or vasoconstrictive drips? The patient was on like 0.05 mics per kg per minute of epinephrine. Is that a high dose? Not really for a post code for a ROSC. That's not that high, right? If someone was really in trouble, you would think like 0.1 of epinephrine and 0.1 of norepinephrine and vaso 0.04. So just being on 0.05 of epinephrine with a decent blood pressure, not doing that bad. And then we looked at the echo again. The heart was actually functioning pretty well. Because obviously it wasn't as bad because now we have the pulse back. So the function had returned just from, 5 minutes prior. So very shrewdly we stopped and we're like, should we still put this patient on ECMO? Should we still do this? Now, what do you think we should have done? Ask yourself that. Would you put this patient on ECMO? There's no right answer, okay? But in the situation, we did. We continued to put the patient on ECMO. And I think it was the right decision, but you could argue both ways because you're like, so putting someone on ECMO was not a benign thing, right? You can kill someone just by putting them on ECMO. 1,000 different things can go wrong. The wire can go in the wrong place. They can bleed out. You can, as you're putting in your cannula, you can accidentally put it too far through the heart, and they can have tamponade. That can kill them. They can clot later because from the artificial tissue or surfaces of the ECMO machine, right? So it's not a benign thing to put them on ECMO at all. ECMO can have many comorbid problems that happen. But we decided to do it because it was this patient arrested for some reason. Just because we have ROS doesn't mean they're not going to rest another 5 minutes, which the patient easily could. We don't know the etiology. It's a dynamic situation. Just because the patient's better now doesn't mean the problem is resolved. So the patient was placed on ECMO successfully, and then the patient was taken down to the cath lab, the cardiologist. They squirted the coronaries, and there was a culprit lesion in one of the coronary arteries. It was stented. Patient did fine, was extubated the next day, was off ECMO a few days later. So it was great. It turned out really well. And the reason I share that story is this is what ECMO practice is like. It's a dynamic thing. You got to make decisions. You got to make it collaboratively, get as many people's opinions as you can, and then you just have to make a decision. And it might be the right decision. It might be the wrong decision. You just don't know. You cannot predict the future, and you got to just make a decision. And if things go wrong, that's how it goes in that practice, in the ECMO practice. That's how it goes. Things can go wrong. You did your best. Everyone tried to do the best. You try to make decisions with the limited information you have in that situation, and you move on, and you learn, and you move on to the next patient, and you learn, and you move on to the next patient, and that's how it goes. Anyway, I just wanted to share that because it's not always crystal clear what you did, what you should do, and patients don't always do fine. This patient did great. It was a great resuscitation. It was a great use of resources. It was a great use of ECMO, and had a great outcome. Doesn't always end out that way, but it was a nice little moment that day. All right, let's move on to an email. Okay, I've barely skimmed this email, but I think it had some good stuff, so I'm coming out this fresh. Hello, ICU Doc. I'm a listener of your podcast and have a couple of questions I hope you address. In one of your episodes, I recall you mentioning your interest in power, politics, and understanding how the world works. This really resonated with me, and I wanted to ask, what initially sparked your interest in these areas? Is there an end goal to your pursuit of understanding these power dynamics, or is it more of an infinite curiosity for you? Yeah, I remember why I wanted to read this email. So these are good questions. So I think what initially sparked my interest in geopolitics and power literacy and stuff like that is immense dissatisfaction with the narratives put forth in American media, in social media, and people's opinions, right? Just immense dissatisfaction with the narratives put forth because it's all narrative, right? Now, there's a lot to say about liberal media, a lot of complaints about it, and the complaints are often accurate, and mainstream media has been liberal for a long time. It's not anymore. I don't know if that's news to you, mainstream media is not liberal anymore. It's conservative. But from a dollar and audience standpoint, mainstream, whether you turn on a podcast or watch cable news or listen to the radio or read a traditional legacy newspaper, it's conservative. It's now the majority of American media is conservative. Now mainstream people use mainstream media to refer to liberal media still, and that's fine, whatever. But most media now is conservative. Anyway, I digress that point. But liberal media puts forth an American exceptionalism. Liberal media is actually conservative also. Whatever. So dissatisfaction with just party politics, partisan politics, and traditional narratives that I've grown under, right? Being born and raised and growing under these narratives, you start to realize that they're not real, the narratives that we put forth. So being dissatisfaction was like, I want to read more. I want to read more. I want to understand more. I seek to understand. And one of the crux of that understanding is the dynamic between traditional capitalism and communism. That's why I read so much in these veins, capitalism and communism, because, anti-communist panic and being anti-communist is a key feature of American politics. So you have to understand what communism is to even understand capitalism. You have to understand its opposite to even understand what American hegemony is and what it represents and what its goals and aims are. And that starts back. So, when you follow that thread, it's a rich, deep thread. You go all the way back. You got to read a lot to start to even understand these things. And then you start as you read more, you discover this, and you're like, oh, I want to know that little tidbit of information, and then I want to know that tidbit of information, and you just go down the rabbit hole. So I really think that's what initially sparked my interest in learning more, is I want to understand how power works. And one of the first best people to start with is Noam Chomsky, right? He is, because he's very succinct, he's very simple, he writes short pieces, and he just shatters American exceptionalism. With crystal clear analysis, irrefutable analysis, just shatters the myth of American exceptionalism. And when I mean American exceptionalism, I'm talking about American hegemonic control over the world, that it is virtuous, that we are paragons of virtue, that we uplift the world out of poverty, out of the goodness of our hearts, etc., etc., etc. When the truth is, American hegemony is a pointillist empire wrought by much violence and war and coercion. Has the American hegemony uplifted a lot of people from poverty worldwide? Yes. Has the American hegemony accelerated industrial growth in pre-industrialized countries? Yes. So yes, there's good things that have happened. I'm not going to deny that. But there's been a price, right? And that's control over the world wrought by war and violence. So when you start understanding these cracks, and then you're dissatisfied with the traditional narratives that are taught to you by your parents and by media and by school, then you start breaking out and you start branching out and you start reading in a non-partisan way, which I have done I would say I've been doing it for at least the last 8 or 9 years, been reading in that thread. Okay, and then Brendan's next question, is there an end goal to your pursuit of understanding these power dynamics, or is it more of an infinite curiosity for you? That's a good question. I don't know the answer. I don't know if there's an end goal, because literature never, the stuff to read never ends. And I'm never satisfied, right? I always want to know more. Now I feel pretty smug. I feel like the more you read, the more you understand, but you're still dissatisfied. Like, I don't think you ever reach that satisfied point, because oh man, there's a great quote from Ursula K. Le Guin. Hang on, I gotta find it. Okay, I found it. It's from her book, The Lathe of Heaven. Which I think I read my review of that on this podcast. Ursula K. Le Guin, if you've never read her, she's amazing, one of my favorite sci-fi and fantasy writers. Simple quote, it says, what sane person could live in this world and not be crazy? So so let me repeat that. What sane person could live in this world and not be crazy? So the more you start reading, the more you start understanding. Now, no one can truly fully understand the reality of geopolitics or politics, right? Or power structures. You can't. It's impossible, because it's clandestine. These things are in the shadows. The way things really work, nobody really understands unless you're a part of it. But as you try to start understanding and you become more knowledgeable, you can't be sane, because you start to realize how crazy the world actually is. That the only thing keeping us together, is myth and stories, and narratives. That's the only thing that actually binds our society together and prevent, a breakdown of our social structures, right? It's not like, but you can start to go a little crazy, and you start to understand how that the world, the normalizing of craziness is actually more crazy than me trying to that now that I see it, and that can make you go crazy. So I don't know if I have an end game. I think it's an infinite curiosity. I think I enjoy it, and I also think it has a lot to do with my own ego. I think it's a ego-driven thing. I think the more I understand, I think it's an ego-stroking thing, to be honest. I think maybe I feel superior when I understand it, which isn't good. Right? I'm not saying that's a good thing, but it's probably an ego thing. It's probably a manifestation of my ego, to be honest. My desire to understand. All right, let's get more into Brennan's email because he gets deep. Um, I'd love to hear more about your philosophical interests. What are your thoughts on the nature of human consciousness, the concept of infinity, and perhaps the ever elusive question of life's purpose? So, the nature of human consciousness, man, I mean, these are great questions, right? Things I do like to think about, things that don't have any answers to them. So, when you look from a science standpoint, human consciousness is a manifestation of the emergence of neuronal activity, right? It's this concept of emergence. Emergence is manifested in a flock of, thousands of birds in the sky that somehow they fly together, even though there's no one directing it, right? The sum is greater than the parts kind of thing. Well, that's what human consciousness is, according to neuroscience. It's the emergence of neuronal synaptic activity, right? And that manifests as our consciousness, right? Now, there's things that I know from a science perspective. So I'm a person of faith, which I got to bring in faith when I'm going to talk about this, which I've talked about in this show. I am a person of faith. I'm Christian. I believe in God. I'm more of a pantheist, right? I do subscribe to a Christian denomination, but I'm much more of a pantheist, right? I believe in a God, and it's because I choose to. And as a person of faith, you do kind of start to separate. Critical thinking doesn't really apply when it comes to faith, right? So the reason I bring this up is consciousness. Like, we have a scientific explanation in part, not fully. I don't think we fully understand consciousness, but I choose to believe, and it feels right to me, that consciousness is also something else, whether that's my spirit. Like, I do feel like I am something different from my body. I've always felt that strongly. I remember one time when I was a medical student, I took a radiology class, and we got the opportunity to get an MRI of our brains for free because we were like learning how MRI machines worked, and so we just scanned our brains. And I remember I looked at my brain first time on an MRI. MRI is a beautiful image of your brain. First time I'd ever seen my brain, and I hated it. I hated looking at my own brain. I was relieved I didn't have a brain tumor, right? Not that I suspected, but I hated it. I had this feeling of like eeriness because I looked at my brain tissue and I was like, that is not me. I felt that so strongly. We don't have explanations for all these things in our lives. And I feel like these things that you feel strongly, if they're rooted in things that are good, I think they're good. And I think you should follow them, right? You should apply them to yourself. I just feel like I'm more than my brain. When my dad passed away and I saw him in his coffin, which I hated, I was like, I hate open coffins. I hate the idea of it. It bothers me. I don't understand why we doll up the bodies of our loved ones, doll them up in makeup, and then look at them in a wooden box and all feel miserable. I hate it. I do not understand why we do that in America, at least. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I sat there looking at my dad. Didn't look like him at all because he's not there anymore. And what I'm saying is my dad is not his body. And I just feel that very strongly. Do I have a scientific empiric reason? No, of course I don't. Because we can't live life just by logic. Logic is great, of course, but we are also just embrace that humans are not logical beings. It doesn't matter how logical you think you are, you're not. We're all irrational. We all have feelings. When we arrive at conclusions logically, you don't think there's emotion behind that as well? Of course there is. So I don't know. That's how I feel about consciousness. I feel like I this is just how I feel. I feel like I've always been who I am, and I will always be who I am. So this harkens to the concept of eternity, and I do believe in eternity. Um, I think I don't think time. I think time is again. This is just my own armchair philosophy speculation. I think time is an illusion of mortality. I think linear time is not real, and there's actually physics concepts actually back that up as well. Not that you need evidence to back up how you feel about things like this, but in the same way that temperature is not real, temperature is a human construct, and color is a human construct of our minds to interpret the world. It's the same thing about time. Like, something being hot is just when we say something's hot, that's just our human experience labeling something that has high kinetic energy, right? Something's hot just because its molecules are moving. They have higher kinetic energy. That's why it's hot. It's the same thing with color, right? Color doesn't actually exist. It's just how we perceive different wavelengths in our brain. Color is not real. It's a simulation our brain creates. Same thing with temperature, and I believe same thing with time. Time, physics works without time, backwards and forwards. And I think it's the same thing with time. I think mortality creates an illusion of time, and I think after mortality, we will understand that time is panoramic. I don't have a reason to believe this. It's just how I feel. Anyway. All right, and then Brennan's question about what, life's purpose. The purpose of life is to be kind. That's it. That is the purpose of life. It's to be kind. Never been so sure of anything in my life. I have a daughter who it's hard to explain how much you love your own child. You can't. And even before she was born, I thought, what will make me more proud as she grows and becomes an adult, the thing that will make me more proud than anything she ever does, whether that's what a career, whatever, is she kind to people? That I will be more, nothing will make me more proud to know that she's a kind person. That is the purpose of life. It's to treat others with kindness, without qualification and without exception. Now, you can be angry and kind. You can yell and be kind. What I mean is you don't need to be a victim, right? You don't need to victimize yourself to be kind. And that's why Christianity appeals to me so much. The teachings of Jesus Christ are, found in the New Testament. The things he actually said and things he actually taught are beautiful. And what do they teach? They teach you to be kind. So that's my 2 cents. All right, let me just finish off reading Brennan's great email. I find these topics endlessly fascinating and would appreciate any insights you'd share. As someone who just graduated and thrown into, quote, real life, I realize that I'm lost. These philosophical questions have been endlessly eating away at me. People tell me that it's normal to feel lost, especially at my age. And although I do understand that it is normal, it still bothers me. I try to read more books and be as open-minded as possible, but about different concepts. But the more I obtain knowledge, the more I become less satisfied with things. So, Brandon, I hope my discussion has helped you. You're not alone in feeling this way. I don't think I don't think you can find satisfaction in knowledge, in reading and reading and reading. I don't think that's not where I personally find satisfaction. Now I do. That's what I kind of said. Like, a lot of it is my ego, thirsting for knowledge. A lot of it is ego driven. And what's at the bottom of your ego? There's not satisfaction there. You're not going to find it there. This kind of harkens back to my social media discussion, right? You're chasing that vanity. Chasing vanity is a shallow well. All right, being thematic here. It's kind of the same thing with constantly trying to seek out knowledge. You'll get diminishing returns, and it's ultimately, I don't think, going to be satisfying. Honestly, I think the way that you find meaning of this life is by developing meaningful relationships with those around you, and meaningful reciprocal relationships, and being kind to one another. And from those relationships, what else do you have other than each other, right? You can't find happiness alone. I don't think you can. all we have is each other. And if we're hating each other and burning bridges, then you're alone. And that's a symptomatic and that's a symptom of the problems in our American life. Anyway, thanks for the email, Brandon. I hope the discussion was helpful for you and others. All right, I'm going to wrap it up with just one book review. The book is Age of Revolutions by Fareed Zakaria, Zakaria. This book was published in March of 2024. It's about 400 pages. So this is really a decent book. And the subtitle is Progress and Backlash from 1600 to the Present. With this book, we get a narrow focus on a few revolutions starting in the 1600s, and then you finish off the book with a geopolitical discussion of right now, 2024. This book may not cover the revolutions you have in mind when you read the title, but it brings with it a very palatable framing. This book is firmly grounded in a classic Western perspective. So, quote, revolution in this book always means liberalization in terms of civil rights, democratic governments, a rejection of monarchy, and an open economy. Okay, that's what the revolution is referring to in this book. We get a nice discussion about the revolution in the Netherlands in the 1600s. The Dutch rejected monarchy much earlier than their other European counterparts, and they embraced trade and classical liberalism with decentralization, much more than their counterparts. The Protestant movement was also quite obviously influential at this time. The author also argues the unique geographical flooding over the land helped the common person have a sense of real land ownership, and that fostered decentralization and kind of public ownership. From this liberal revolution, you get one of the first multinational companies that probably ever existed, the Dutch East India Company, as well as one of the first stock markets. All this stuff was very ahead of its time if you considered corporate market dominance a sign of enlightenment, which this author certainly does in the framing of this book. We then delve into the British Revolution, resulting in a constitutional monarchy and a liberal economy, which clearly outpaced the Netherlands later in terms of mercantilism and industrialization and dominance, right? The French Revolution gets a decent treatise here as well. It's the same take-home from the vast majority of historians, that the French Revolution was a disaster. The French Revolution was certainly a rebellion against monarchical rule, but it was at the behest of the aristocracy who wielded proletariat populism. The revolution turned authoritarian pretty quick, with the state ownership of churches, mass censorship, and counter-revolutionary violence and executions. The French government then thought they could use Napoleon's strongman populism and control him for their use, and then dispose of him, but of course that's not how that worked out, which is usually how it doesn't work out with fascist leaders. The biggest revelation in this book for me was the author's take on the American Revolution. And here it is. The American Revolution wasn't really a revolution. It was a war that won independence. Nothing after the revolution actually changed the social and economic life of Americans. America never imported feudalism to begin with, so it had nothing to rebel against. The American Revolution was simply a war of financial independence wrought by aristocratic slavers who continued to be aristocratic slavers after the revolution. The real American Revolution was the Industrial Revolution. After stealing a ton of intellectual property from the UK, the Industrial Revolution took off in America and kept going to the mid to late 1800s, and that's what changed the social and economic fabric of America. It wasn't the American Revolution, which is an interesting point. Here's what's missing from this book. The Russian Revolution. Despite starting this book out with a quote from Marx, the author does not delve in the Bolshevik Revolution, which I found curious. The Russian Revolution was certainly a rebellion against monarchy as well, just like the Dutch and the English and the Americans, so why not include it in this book? I think it's because Lenin and Stalin did not usher in a liberalized market economy. Stalinism became authoritarian and closed economy, so I guess that wasn't thematic enough for this book, which is my only criticism of the book. At any rate, the later half of this book was surprisingly a pure geopolitical analysis of modern politics in 2024, which kind of surprised me. It wasn't unwelcome because I found the assessment to be rather spot on. The short story is that globalization is shuttering, it's closing. We are going from an open liberal economy to a closed economy. And there are signs of this everywhere, with ending of NAFTA under Trump's first administration and Biden's ban on semiconductors to China. Biden has basically started a tech cold war with China with this act. The U.S. has waning interest in protecting deepwater navigation, global trade, and will continue to recede from this role, which will create regional power vacuums and conflict. Russia, China, and the U.S. are becoming more fascist and autocratic. That's unassailable. China and Russia particularly seeks the fruits of an open market economy, but exerts harsh cultural domestic control over their populations. It's all very concerning, and this closure will certainly continue with a Trump second term, and it will have unpredictable but predictably violent consequences. So that's The Age of Revolutions by Fareed Zakaria, which I highly recommend. I really enjoyed it. I think you'd enjoy it too. Anyway, that's it for me. Thanks for listening. If you want to email me, share with me your thoughts. icudrecmo@gmail.com. icudrecmo, ECMO, @gmail.com. And that's it. I'll keep, as I said, I'm done posting stuff on social media, but I will keep doing this podcast, which I enjoy. Please rate, review, and share it. And have a good one. Thanks.